Most chefs think their impact stops at the plate. But what happens when a chef starts influencing systems, supply chains, even how institutions feed thousands of people every day? You're listening to Fugitive Chefs, a podcast about what happens when chefs step outside the traditional kitchen path. I'm Furkan, I've worked in kitchens like Noma and Mugaritz, and today I work outside restaurants as a senior innovation chef at Kraft Heinz. And today's episode is about something much bigger than restaurants. Today I'm speaking with Chef Matthew Beaudin. Matthew's career goes far beyond the traditional idea of what a chef does. From leading culinary operations at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, where food became a tool for ocean conservation, to now working on a large-scale food system in education, his work sits at the intersection of food, sustainability, and systems thinking. And I think what makes this conversation interesting is this. He didn't leave being a chef. He redefined what being a chef could look like. So, Chef Matthew, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. I've been following you for a while now, actually, much before I actually approached you for the podcast. But before we get into this, Matthew, like for people who do not know you, let's think it's a fresh slate. Because I bet there are people who already know something about you. Tell us, what do you do today for work? What is it? What is it your day-to-day like?
So my day to day, I wake up every day, and I'm super lucky that I am able to lean into my passion, right, which is conservation and sustainability. And so for the better part of the last 11 years, I worked very closely with the Monterey Bay Aquarium and their seafood watch program. I was actually based there, and I oversaw 130 partnerships nationwide here, zoos, aquariums, and museums. And more recently, I've taken that passion to higher education because I believe that if I can change the future, I need to start with the people who are going to be the future. And so if I can help educate them. And so I've been so blessed to have this like decade plus of just education for myself. Dude, I'm a chef. So my whole life prior to this was like, hey, how do I get the rarest, coolest ingredients? Like, where do I get my caviar? Oh, it comes from Russia. Where do I get my truffles? It comes from Italy. My pasta comes from Spain. Like, it was all about excess and in just how rare it was. And now I've got this idea of like, how do I tell the story of where it's from in a unique way? Like, we're not exploiting the resource. We're helping the people there. We are engaging in a different way. So I get to wake up every single day and do that. My goal is to help educate people, and whether that's museums or aquariums, or whether that's colleges or K through 12, or whether that's huge businesses like IBM and Apple, like how do I help make a difference? Because I've realized, and I've been beating this drum probably for the past year, of like, you can be the drop of water that starts the wave. And like, that's an incredible prospect. It's also some really crazy shit to try and believe, like, oh, as one person you can do something. Like, it's hard to believe that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel the words you mentioned of like, first of all, you told us you're a chef, you've built experience in this, you mentioned IBM, you mentioned museums, you mentioned aquarium. But it's ironic that we never think that there could be a place for chefs on these tables or even these rooms,
Right.
So before
Yes.
you got there, of course, the reason you are there today is years of experience and years of putting things into practice. And then the path that you're on right now is how can I raise the scale of this impact to get into education. But before all of this, how did you first get into cooking? Because that for me is very interesting when I talk to people like you who've been in this trade and have completely changed how this trade is to be done. I think your pathway is an inspiration for people to think like, okay, I can be in an aquarium, but they need to know, where did you start? Was cooking for you? Was it plain simple cooking in a restaurant, or was it already something bigger than cooking? What got you in it?
Cooking for me started as ego. And so I was a kid, and my uncle was a chef. And so every year, Christmas, New Year's, he'd bring over like the turkey at Thanksgiving. Christmas, he'd bring over the prime rib. And we'd have like 20, 30 people, good sized family. I'm Irish. And so we'd always have quite the boisterous group. And he'd come in with this chunk of meat from the restaurant that he'd been cooking all day at the restaurant. And everybody would stop what they were doing, and they'd all gather around him. And I was like, he's like the coolest person in the room. Like, out of nowhere, it went from nothing to coolest person. I was like, I want that. Like, I want to be that guy. Like, everyone looks at him like he's the shit. And so how do I take that and be cool? And then as I got older and I was sitting around that same table, and people started to pass away and people disappear, right? You realize that table with food is what keeps that memory alive. And so you all then sit around that table and you share stories and you talk about the times you had or the people that are no longer there. And food is what brings them together. And so it started as ego, and then it turned into this ability to keep people in my life that were no longer there. And I was like, it all centers around one thing, and that's food. And then I got older and I realized that food is at the center of everything, right? If you go to a funeral, that's what brings people together at the end, right? If you have a birthday
Yeah.
party, that's what brings people together is the cake. If you have a wedding, if you have no matter what you do, food is at the center. Like food has started wars because there's not enough of it. It has ended wars
Hmm.
because you share it. It was literally when you look at the United States of America, the founding, the pilgrims, like that's what people talk about is they traded food. Like
Yeah.
food has united people and it has absolutely destroyed civilizations over time. And so I realized it was a powerful tool. And so by that
Yeah.
same token, that is what I'm using it for now is a tool. And I think I like the stage that food gives me
Hmm.
to talk about bigger issues.
Yeah, I think people really undervalue, and like I'm saying this from like something that I could not. I mean, there's no way I could prepare this, but this morning I was at work and we had a visit from the Kraft Heinz office in Chicago for the finance people and like growth management, and like they had a whole day of like understanding what R&D does. So they see packaging, they see all kind of things, but I feel the power that chefs have to be able to translate ideas into something tangible, something edible. I think apart from food, if you don't count into pharmaceuticals, there's nothing else you put inside your body and
Well,
let yourself be in that position of consume something. And I feel
vulnerable.
people really
Yeah.
underestimate, yeah, exactly, and people underestimate the value that food can have. And I love how you've put it that for you it was something that started as, yeah, somebody being the center of attention, and then you're now capitalizing that. Of course it's obvious that food is the center of all these
Yeah.
all these wars, arguments, talks, but how can you use it as a tool for it? That's super interesting for me. But was there some sort of, I don't know what, I think it's so obvious as you say, but at the same time it's not very obvious. People still look at it as a blue collar job, or where you can only, the only place people put cooking at a pedestal is fine dining, which I again
Yeah.
feel is, it's not the best sort of, I mean, it's not the best sort of platform or the audience to send bigger community like system messages. When was the first moment for you felt that, okay, this is actually, yeah, I can have a bigger mission than serving just customers?
Yeah. So I would say early in my career, I chased all of it, right? I chased the fine dining. I did the Ritz Carltons and the Broadmoors and all the fine dining. I was in New York City and chasing write ups from New York Times writers, and I wanted the stars and the everything. In when I realized it was all a crock of shit is in Africa, and so
Yeah.
I was running a 2,000 room hotel, and I had the chance to go to Africa, so I gave up. I was making about $140,000 a year, and they offered me $10,000 a year. And I said, you know what? I'm in. I said, I'm done. I said, I'm so done chasing all this because it's all pay to play, right? It's all pay to play. And it's good to gain a platform, but that's it. And we reward the system over and over and over again. But the system is it cannibalizes itself over time. And I was in Africa and I had been on campus that got me in. I came in, I landed at night, drove 4 hours into the jungle, got on the campus, and I said, I'm going to go out in the morning. They said, nah, we want you to stay here for a week. Just stay inside the campus.
Yeah.
So that's weird. About a weekend, I'm like, isn't that bad? I got fresh water, toilet flushes, like everything's normal. This is not bad. And about a week later, I opened the front gates and I went outside and I realized I was in Rwanda for real. And there were
Yeah.
starving kids all around me, and there was people dying of malaria, people dying of diarrhea, like things that like were normal for me in the U.S. You take Pepto-Bismol, you live, you get it there, you die. And it was this like mind-blowing experience for me. And so I started just trading seeds with the local Umudugudu, which is like the village chief. And so we were trading seeds. I started learning how to cook their food. They helped me plant on the property, and I was just about ready to harvest, and it was during rainy season. and the soil there is so incredible, and it is volcanic. I was literally inside a volcano, and
Hmm.
I mean, the heads of cauliflower, bro, were bigger than my head. I shit you not, bigger than my head. And so I'm ready to harvest all this stuff, and we got a monsoon rain, and the old adage that shit rolls downhill is for real. And so everybody has latrines in their backyard dug in a hole, and I came out in the morning, and it was just filled with everybody's toilet, and I lost everything. And I had
Yeah.
this mind-blowing moment of like, sustainability isn't what I think it is. Like, I'm out here talking about sustainability like it's cool. Sustainability to the rest of the world means, where does my next glass of water come from? Right? How
Absolutely.
do I get my next food? In 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 the first world, we think that everybody shuts the light out before they go to bed at night, that everybody turns the faucet on or flushes the toilet. For the rest of the world, for a majority of the population, they've never flushed a toilet in their life. They've never turned
Hmm.
on a water faucet in their life. Like, if you haven't drank water out of a plastic bag, like,
Yeah, of
and
course. Yeah, yeah,
like
100%.
like there's so those moments for me were so pivotal in who I became as a chef, and I realized that I'm out here trying to be cool, and I'm out here trying to tell my story, but my story is not it. And that's when I made the switch to, how do I tell the story of the person growing the food? How do I tell the story of the farmer, the fisherman, the rancher? Because the rancher that births the cow and sees that baby cow, that everybody else looks at and goes, that is the cutest thing ever. That's so sweet. Look at that baby cow. Look at it try and walk. That rancher, the second he sees it, knows that one day, from the moment he sets eyes on it, it's going to be a steak. And that is something we can't even comprehend as a human, to look at a baby cow and go, that's a steak. You just can't. It doesn't work. And so the emotional connection that they form to these animals, and then they have to say goodbye to them because we demand it as consumers. Like, I want to tell the stories of the people doing that. And so it's unrealistic to think that I can make you sit down with me on a slaughterhouse floor, because that's just not, it's not right. Nobody's going to do that. You can't tell that story to humans, but I can connect you emotionally to the farmer. And if you're connected to that farmer, you'll do your research, because people want to know now more than ever. There's this access to information. And so you'll look into it, and you'll make sure you're buying from the right people. You make sure you support people who are doing it the right way. And so my sphere of influence has grown to be the real people doing the good work, versus trying to change big food, because big food is big, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
really hard to change that.
Yeah, and I feel it's humbling to hear stories like these, and I mean, there's two ways you can go about it. There's somebody else who lands who's not Matthew over there and says, drops the hat and says, okay, this is not for me. I'm pretty comfortable where I am, and the other approach is to of course I feel I see this divide, especially in the younger population, which feels sort of either there's a group of people within food or outside of food in the world at large, I feel, who feel that yes, we are in Europe or in America, in the first world, as you say, we're in a privileged position to demand things and to have things and to enter a supermarket which has aisles and aisles of food. I had this chat with my girlfriend yesterday. She was in Brazil a few years ago, and she said, like, they used to always buy the same things because there's not much variety, but we have this variety thanks to, I feel it's all connected, because thanks to others who don't, as you said, because we demand the steak, somebody else has to have that emotional disconnect to have that. I think it's like projects like yours and moments that you have been in and lived that in person, that it's not superficially making something sustainable, but rather what is sustainable for every context. I think it's it's unfortunate that the way we live now, the world we live in right now, the attention spans are short. Podcasts are already too long for content. For example, TikTok for 10 seconds is it's a good amount of attention
Yeah.
span. And then how do you push these messages which do not go in a small 60-second TikTok? But for you personally, I would like to understand, when like for the Monterey Bay Aquarium, for example, I was reading about on LinkedIn about the project itself that you've done over there, your job over there. First of all, how does one land a job like that, and what is the role of a chef inside an aquarium, to ask like a very lame like a layman mentality?
So I will tell you, there's no straight road ever.
Yeah.
And that's the easiest answer. There is no straight road to an aquarium or a museum or a zoo. Um, for me, there was a friend that I had known for a long time, and he was the corporate chef, and He said, listen, give me a year. You jump around all the time. Give me 1 year. I said, yeah, I can do that. And so I got there, and the opportunities, I wouldn't say presented themselves out of the gate. The food program was fine.
Hmm.
Everything was fine. I could have left it alone, and uh, everything would have been fine. But there was something in my soul, in my heart, in my gut that just knew I could be different and refused to believe that fine was good enough. And I think that's been my entire career. You know, I take no as a challenge. And when you tell me no, my immediate gut instinct is I can show you why yes.
Hmm.
And it's not because I want to fight. It's because I believe that the rules in this world are meant to be broken within the confines of the law, and as long as I'm pushing people to think outside the box, and I'm making them dream differently and think differently, and it's the biggest gift you can give somebody, right? To like break them out of their own head. Like, hey man, you've seen it this way your whole life, and this is the only way you think it works, right? But what if you took one step outside the box, right? It's the old, like the elephants in Thailand, right? They're tied to the stick forever
Yeah.
when they're babies, and they you see these multiple ton animals held by a stick, and it's like, well, why don't they just walk away? And it's because they don't know that they can walk away. They're so afraid to walk away from that stick because they know that stick is going to hold them down. And that's us as people, dude. That's us as, whether it's chefs or consumers. We just are afraid because we know that stick is there. I took the stick forever, and I'm using it to fight with now, man. I'm fighting with the stick that hold me down because I believe we can change it. Like, y- when you start to look at the enormity of life and the fact that you're living and you're breathing and you're here, and you have, you know, you're healthy. And then I look at myself and I go, all the things that people wish they could do that I could do, right? Like, I can walk around. I have that ability. I have a voice. I can see. Like, I owe it to every single person in this world who can't do the things that I can do, whether it's write or read or see or walk. Like, it's up to me to do it for them, and like, it's such a big responsibility. And I love waking up every single day with that responsibility, dude, because when I used to wake up, I would say I woke up in my younger years, like, okay, I got to go to work, and that's it. And I'm gonna get a Michelin star. Like, I'm gonna get a James Beard Award. Like, it, it would crush me when I didn't get it and somebody else got it. And this way that I see the world now, when somebody else gets it, man, it makes me happy. Like, I'm excited to see somebody else succeed because that means it's working. Like, that means they did. I need more people to do it. I need more people to buy in. I need more people to get off the couch and do it. And so, like, to be in a position where other people's success, like, fires me up, like, that's pretty sick.
Yeah, and I feel what you said about like how you have to challenge the system, and like you, and within the bounds of the law, how can you break these preconceived notions? I feel that is today. I personally feel it's today more than necessary, because everything that we used to think is creative by doing repetitive tasks in the age of AI, all of that can be replaced. So the only thing
Yeah,
you can contribute as humans,
this
as
your
the
heart.
human race, I feel, is to challenge the set rules that we have just lived by, because that's all we know. But how can we challenge that? And for you, I think as a chef must have been, I do not know, I think my assumption from the outside is that for you as a chef who has, say, trained classically in restaurants and gets into a job which is connected very closely to ocean conservation, what does it internally challenge you in as a chef? Like, were there things which were very normal to you, and then you were like, okay, why was this normal to me? What was your day to day like? Did it change you a lot as a chef to be in an institution like that?
I would say, yeah, it changed me a lot. What was normal to me, like I said earlier, was getting stuff from far away. Like, it was, how obscure is the ingredient? It was, you know, dude, it was how is it about me was what changed. And being able to then look at it and go, how do I tell these stories of the people doing the work, man? And whether that's salmon in New Zealand or barramundi in Australia, like, doing work with people that are doing the good work. And when I say that, like, you'll have chefs who go, hey, listen, I like this salmon. And it's like, yeah, you like that salmon because they give you a little bit of notoriety. I work with the salmon I work with because they work with the Maori and they're tied deeply into the culture and they're stewards of the land. I work with the barramundi I work with because they work with the indigenous population in Northern Australia and they're giving them jobs. And when I went there to visit them, they didn't take me just to the fish farm. We went out in the bush and I learned about the culture. I learned about the people. Like I wasn't there to do a photo op. Like it was, I want to learn about what you're actually doing. And so connecting to people has been the biggest change for me because prior to what I do now, I was connected to products. It was,
Right.
I support this product. I support this ingredient. I need this. Now I'm looking for people. I want stories. I
Mhm.
want to know why you do what you do, what drives you to do it. Because it's that old adage, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And just by being alive, bro, like we have so much power. And you look at like, go back 10, 15 years. We didn't have a voice as people as much as we do
Mhm.
now. When I was a kid, there was no damn, I mean, the internet was invented when I was growing up. Like we didn't have any of it. We didn't have TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, all that. And so the voice was what people wanted it to be. You now have 16-year-old kids with millions of followers online driving engagement and driving change. And so this idea that you can be the drop of water that starts a wave, it starts to gain traction and it starts to be real. And it's something that when you talk to people now, this next generation, they look at it and go, man, I actually do have the ability to change the world. That was talk back then. Like back in the 60s, 70s, you had to chain yourself to a tree or sit in the middle of the road if you wanted someone to pay attention. Like
Yeah.
now, you just put a post up in 30 seconds of your life and you can talk to millions of people. And that's a wild concept. I often think like if I could bring my grandfather back today and show him, he'd be mind blown. Like never mind
100%.
AI, just this, just you and I talking
Yeah. Yeah.
on a phone, the video, like it's
Yeah.
unfathomable how far we've come. And so if any generation has ever had the opportunity to change the world, it's this generation now.
If this is something you've been thinking about lately, feeling stuck, questioning your path, you're exactly why I started this podcast. And if you've been enjoying these conversations, the best way to support the show is simple: follow it, rate it, or share it with someone who might need to hear this. It genuinely helps more chefs find these conversations. Yeah, it has to be us, and I'm correct. I mean, totally with you on that. It's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of responsibility to do things right, because yeah, I mean, one thing is to have access to information, and the other thing is what do you do with that information. And I feel also coming back to what you said in the beginning about how classically trained chefs are trained on, like as you say, product. Go for the best foie gras. Go for
Mhm.
knowing where your caviar roughly is from, what sort of fish roughly is. But I feel what I see also in restaurants, I think fine dining started that movement of sorts, but it's coming down also with the startups that come also in the big food category, or like in retail as well. You see today that the consumer isn't just satisfied with flavor, texture, packaging. It's all a given now. It's like that is the accepted, that is
Of
the
course.
standard. Give me storytelling, because that's where you can have an edge. And I feel
Yeah.
that's where projects like you, which are not, there's no shortcut to it, there's no easy way to find out
No.
the truths you have found out. But of course, once you have somebody like you who's doing the hard part, leveraging it is where institutions, governments, public bodies, private bodies need to support missions like yours so that it gets a bigger platform, because the work, I feel it's yeah, it's more fruitful when it gets across, the message gets across to more people. And I also understand that sustainability, as you call it, you showed us yourself in the conversation you had about Africa, for example, how different the meaning of sustainability is for people. There's
Hmm.
different aspects of it. In practice, I feel that many chefs today agree with it. The people in general agree with, yes, we have to be sustainable. But where do you see the main challenges or the main hurdles? Is it lack of knowledge? Is it too much of a work? Is it just that we are used to a system that's bad but easy to live with? Where do you think is the main struggle to adopt wholesome sustainability?
Man, I think it's a mix of everything you just said.
Yeah.
It's it's easy to do the wrong thing. We've made it so easy to screw it up that that's just the way we do it. And that is the sentence that has been the end of so many organizations. I'm sure so many civilizations is that's the way we
Hmm.
do it. And that's the way we do it is such a defeatist mentality that just says if we fail, that's okay because we're comfortable. Information is out there. It is more available now than it's ever been. And so I think that's why you're seeing the shift. I think that's why we're on this call. I think that's why these conversations are happening in rooms that they've never been had before. As a chef, I can't tell you how many places I've stood in this coat now on stages I don't belong. Whether it was at the IUCN in Abu Dhabi, I'm headed to Lisbon to have a conversation tomorrow. I have stood on stages in whether it was slow food, you name it. But chef coats didn't belong in those rooms before.
Yeah.
And to have a chef come out and talk to you is so crazy to think. Like if you go back 20 years and a chef came out to your table and was like, hey, listen, I want to tell you about where your chicken came from. You'd be like, what?
Mm.
Well, I don't care where my chicken came from. And why are you talking to me? Like I'm paying a lot of money for this meal. Get back in the kitchen because being a chef as a career, to your point in the beginning, is blue collar. And it
Yep.
wasn't even blue collar 40 years ago. It wasn't even considered a trade. It was just
Hmm.
something you did to make money. It wasn't even classified in the United States as a job 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So the fact that it has gone from not only something that people didn't even care about, but to something that is now influential in such a short period of time is unprecedented. Absolutely unprecedented.
And how do you see the role of education? Because I had this question for later, but I feel this is the right moment because I have been speaking to people who come from education as a background, academia as a background, people who haven't had that and later end up contributing to academia. I know you work with educational institutes, not just with culinary, but outside of it, but especially focusing on culinary because I feel today we are in a generation or the ones entering the profession right now. I feel many of them at some scale get education. Depends on what you can afford, depends on where you're growing up. Of course, me putting world on the same pedestal is wrong. I feel a kid growing in Africa who wants to be a chef maybe doesn't even think of culinary school, but at least the world we both live in right now, people do go to culinary school. Where do you think, what role do they play? How is the scenario in general? Do you think education is doing enough to open these pathways for chefs to make them understand they have this, after of course a fair amount of experience, they can have that sphere of influence or teach them soft skills, teach them other things which put them on these tables or platforms?
I do. And I think it's happening as we speak now more than ever. I'll tell you when I was recently at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, we had two externs from the Culinary Institute of America. And it was the first time we've ever had externs. And the externs came specifically because they wanted to learn about sustainability. And it was probably one of the most pivotal moments for me in my career, realizing I needed to start getting an education because there were kids out there who want it and don't know how to get it. And the fact that they're seeking me out and seeking out opportunities to get this knowledge, it is so telling of where we are at as a culture and where we are at this very time in needing to make this information more accessible. I went to the Culinary Institute of America when I graduated back in 2005, but I recently went back and gave a speech on sustainability and seafood. And I was giving the speech, and there was a bunch of kids in the front row, and they're talking and talking and talking. I'm like, man, nobody cares. Like, this is so whack. Like, nobody. I'm the old dude now. They just tuning me out. And so at the end of the speech, I was all done, and they all stayed. I said, we're done. Nobody left. I was like, you guys are free to go. We're good. I'll see you. We have another speech this afternoon. They said, well, can we ask questions now? I said,
Oh wow.
sure. And we stayed for 40 minutes asking questions. And that group in the front stayed to the very, very end of that asking questions. And what I thought was kids tuning out was kids having discussions amongst themselves about what I was talking about and had questions and they wanted to ask but didn't know how to ask because they were embarrassed or they didn't know how to ask me the question. And so academia is at this point where I believe they're starting to lean in, as evidenced by my very presence and invite to be there to speak. The Culinary Institute of America has deeply leaned into sustainability in its programming. And so I think there's a time now where if we seize it, if we lean into it, then it will take root. And I don't know that there's any other time in our history where it has been more important, but also more timely. And there's this vacuum that's been created by a lack of information where everyone's just rushing to try and find it. And so I feel fortunate in my role now that I'm in the place I am at the time I am because I'm here where I can still relate. I'm not 80. I'm certainly not 20, but I'm at this middle where I've lived it. So I can speak from lived experience, but I've also not lived it so long ago that it's not relevant. And so what I'm talking
Yeah.
about, they're living and they can feel it and they can see it around them. And so it gives people inspiration, I believe, to take action.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel CIA starting this. I had a very recent chat, I think 2-3 weeks ago, with Robert Jones, the vice president, and he was telling me all about what's happening with restructuring and all the verticals they're opening into, all the 7, 8 verticals they're starting into, what CIA can be. I feel not just for CIA and not just for people like you who are connected to the institution itself, but I feel the place it is, the place Culinary Institute of America has always been. I feel what's even more positive for me is that these places which are iconic within the sphere of education have a ripple effect. So in some way or the other, the work you're doing, the work CIA is doing, is gonna reach the small community school in say Northern Europe at some point, and then from there it goes to India or to Brazil or to Argentina. And I feel that's super interesting that the institution is waking up and understanding. My students passing out are not entering in restaurants or are not ending up in 20 years in restaurant kitchens. So what else do we need to do to restructure and give that education? So I think, yeah, that's beautiful. And that's why also I keep following people like you to understand what are these new profiles entering who would not ideally be in the very old school format of education. They would not be the people who are teaching knife skills or teaching butchery, teaching things like that. But then subjects like sustainability within school, I mean, that's a big one. And even if that starts ringing a bell, and even if they understand loosely of what the concept is, we are already preparing a better industry with future leaders who can, yeah, transform this idea in their own way.
I mean, when you look back, right, you have pioneers who've been doing this for decades, but it wasn't as important to people back then, like Jeremiah Tower, right? Like this guy was
True. Yeah.
pioneering sustainability for decades, but the word sustainability 50 years ago didn't mean what it means today. And so I look at myself as a continuation, right? Jeremiah Tower, he started the march. I've taken the torch. I'm making it relevant to this next generation. Somebody's got to take it from me. And I want them to fight for it because you want the hungriest person to win. You need the loudest voice in the room. I need the person who bubbles to the top to be the one that takes it, right? I don't need the person with the quietest voice who thinks it's cool or it might be fun. I need the person who says, I want to go stand in the shanty in Ghana and have the hard conversations where the guy on the beach is telling me if I don't pay him for a round of beers, he's going to stab me in the neck with a beer bottle, right? Like I want to have that person. I need the person who is going to take the risk, who's going to put the cause before themselves, who's going to take the chances that are dangerous, because that's where the conversation starts, is the hard places. I think that when you look at sustainability as a whole, dude, we can talk about fish all day and we can go, you
Yeah.
need to use green rated best choice, in Seafood Watch. That's amazing. But there's a whole other side of that conversation of like 90% of the world who's starving doesn't have a choice. They're going to
Hmm.
eat what comes out of the water, because if they don't, they're going to die. They will starve. So how do you educate that population? How do you educate those people to say, if you keep doing what you're doing, your kids won't have fish, your grandkids won't have fish? How do you educate them in a way that's thoughtful, but in a way they want to listen? Because I'll tell you when you're starving, and most people who listen to this, I don't think have ever been in a position to be starving. But when you are starving, it doesn't matter what anybody tells you. It might be the last lion in the jungle. But if it's a difference between the lion in the jungle or you're going to eat. And so having conversation of sustainability, I believe, are so inherently different all around the world. And that is what I love so much is I am thankful that I have the wherewithal to be able to have a conversation with people from different backgrounds all around the planet. And that's what I'm trying to do is share that message globally.
Yeah, and it's not an easy job, and as you say, it's a very layered conversation. It has very small, yeah, notes to it which have to be all taken into consideration. And I feel that's why you say it requires somebody who is really passionate about it and to be true about it rather than just going for the superficial gimmicky part of sustainability of doing things which just look sustainable but might not be. You can't generalize things like this. And something interesting you also said, Matthew, on your profile is that chefs carry a responsibility beyond the kitchen. But I would like to understand, what does that responsibility actually look like in reality? And I ask this question because there is a school of thought which says chefs underestimate the influence, but there's also a school of thought which says they overestimate it and they have suddenly become very loud about too many topics and they should just focus on cooking. So what is maybe there's no right way, and maybe there is just priority of topics has to be different, but what do you mean by chefs have a responsibility outside the kitchens?
First off, I think that's an awesome question. I I couldn't agree with you more. I think both sides are right. I think similar to like celebrities and politics, like I want to watch you in a movie. I don't want to hear your thought on politics. I just want you to be in the movie because that's what I know you for. And so I do keep that in mind when I'm speaking about things. What I also think is chefs and their responsibility is to talk about food and food systems and the people whose lives it affect. I think when chefs got too loud for me is when chefs started making it about them and not about the
Mm.
system. And so for me, when you say chefs are too loud, it's about them, right? It's about their dish or how they plate or the intricacies of the food. It's not about talking about where the food came from, the humans. And for me, when you say what their responsibility outside the kitchen is to tell the stories of those people, to share the passion of the people that are doing the good work. And I say doing the good work because they don't have a choice most of the times, right? These are second generation, third generation farmers who are scraping to get by because they're fighting the big food fight, right? They're fighting the big farm fight. So the influence, in my opinion, is chefs stepping out of the kitchen and meeting people who are in the field. That's the responsibility. Probably, man, I must have been 6 or 7 years ago now. I did a dinner on a farm or a lunch. And so I said, hey, listen, we invited 70 chefs, my chef de cuisine, Adam Young, and I at the time. And we said, listen, we're going to butcher a lamb and a pig at 5 a.m. We'll start cooking at 9. But if you would like to be there for the process from beginning to end, please show up at 5:30. 70 chefs all showed up at 9 o'clock. Not a single one showed up for the butchering. And it was mind bending to me because while I understand it's not pretty, nobody wants to see that. I don't expect people to show up with their camera on, but I expect that there's a level of respect and accountability to understand and appreciate the process for the food. And so they're being responsible with where they buy from, but also to the people that they're buying from.
Yeah. No, but I mean, let's be honest for a second. And you say that yes, there is all these pathways that you have uncovered for yourself, but I feel it's all been a logical transition. It has been, I guess, some of them must have been obvious for you. Some of them, as you said, your friend set you up with this gig, but and you also face a lot of young people early on, starting out in the first externship in restaurants at CIA. So most of my audience, I would say, a big chunk of my audience is younger professionals who are seeing that the model of possibly the model of chef that they understood when they were signing up for culinary school is not the one they would like to retire with. So they do want to enter the trade and learn the craft and learn the skills and grow in within those ranks, but they somehow feel that maybe in the next 10, 15 years, the same profession might not align with the kind of life I want to live, or the monetary aspirations I have, or the family life I want to have. And then they see careers like you, where they see that it is possible at some point to be able to do things which are more aligned with your value, but they also come by trade. I mean, a lot of trade offs, right? So when you speak to these young career professionals, what are the few things that, I mean, a few advice you give, sort of advice you give them on what sort of things they should look for in their learning, what sort of restaurants they should choose early on in the profession? Any messages you would have for those young, early on career professionals?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, go out and get the experience. I had a chef very young in my career, and his name was Jared Koyak. And he said, you can do one of two things. He said, you can either work for a chef who's worked everywhere and stay with them and get all the knowledge they have and learn everything you can from them, or you can go out and get it yourself. And no matter what you do, you're going to get judged. People are going to tell you move too often or you stayed too long. And I decided early on that I was going to go out and get it. And I would tell the next generation the exact same thing. Go after it and get it. Spend a year at each place early on in your career. Figure out who you are. Find what it is that you want to do and what you're passionate about. And then chase your passion unapologetically. Always.
I love what you said, because a lot of people have these very mixed opinions about how early on should you make transitions, should you switch restaurants, should you not? And as you said, there's no one way to go about it. There are things which work for one, doesn't work for the other. But I feel, even though you didn't put it them in exactly those words, but what you said to me, what it sounds like is just be true to yourself. And if you think there's a calling that you want to do this, that you want to jump into this French restaurant and then go for the Italian one the next year, I think at the end of it, from what I've seen in my very early path, it all somehow falls in place. It all somehow makes sense. I think things do misalign when I talk to people within the community I run, or within, I think, my sphere of chefs, people who passed out of culinary college with me. I feel the misalignment happens, or the dissatisfaction or anxiety, whatever you call it, happens when you chase things that you don't really want, but you have been told that they'll work out for you, or you've seen somebody else, it worked out for them. So I feel mimicking doesn't really work, but staying true to yourself does work. Would you sort of agree to that?
I would agree that staying true to yourself is the only answer in this industry. And
Yeah.
if you spend your entire life chasing an award, I just don't know how satisfying that can be. And I can tell you that I have a lot of awards in boxes, and I don't go back and look at them, but I do often think about the people that I've been able to meet on my travels, the places that I've been able to see, the things that I've been able to eat and experience. And I learned it late in my career, and I wish I would have learned it a little sooner, that there are no rules, and everybody out there is just making this up, and we're
Yeah.
all trying to figure it out. Like, Michelin is a made up fictional award system. Somebody made that up. Like, it's
Yeah.
all fictional. And so if you dedicate your life to get it, like, what does that get you? And I was in Vietnam last year for an extensive amount of time, and I realized that there was a Michelin on like every other door.
Mm.
I said, I don't understand how this is possible. Either it's not real and people are just putting it on their door because they've realized people stop there, or Michelin is everywhere. And so if everybody's chasing this status, what is that worth in your life? And nothing that you will do in your career will replace people or experiences. And so I would say to every single young culinarian out there, every person who's not a culinarian, every person who's sitting in an office just listening to this going, what am I doing for my life? Just go do it. Literally,
Yeah.
just go do it. There are no rules to life other than break the rules and have fun doing it. I
Yeah.
look back at all these
100%.
experiences that I've had. Yeah, like that's what we do it for. Like, you only get so many days, you only get so many weekends, you only get so many opportunities to do something with your life. And if you fail at that, then That's a much bigger failure than not getting an award.
Definitely, chef. Couldn't agree more. And I feel things are only as important as the importance we give it. And
Yes.
it's a pity if we don't give importance to things that really matter to us, really connect to us, really feel natural to us, and give importance to branding and marketing exercise by a tire company. It's on us, you know. It's that's our job to realign with ourselves what we want. And I feel I couldn't have a better note to finish this, like close this conversation. But before I let you go, the last ask I would have from you is, if there is somebody out there listening to you, say they have got the experience they need to be in a chef, they're looking for their next move, and they when they listen to this conversation, they feel like, wow, I love what Chef Matthew is doing here, and how aligned he is with his values, and how his work resembles to the kind of values he has for himself. They're in a kitchen, they care about impact, sustainability, systems, but they don't really see a clear path. And most good paths are these, yeah, they're not very clear, they're not very obvious, you know. But where could they even start? What should be their first move to get closer to their idea of a future?
I would say reach out to me,
Yeah.
because I'm still figuring it out as I go, and there is no clear path. But what I've learned in this industry more over the last 5 years than ever in my life is who you know and who you talk to matters. I reach out to so many people, and I hear no 80% of the time, but I refuse to quit. I would tell anyone who's interested to reach out to me, and I will help you find the right direction. Look at our conversation in general, right? If
Yeah.
if if I hadn't reached back out to you, I would have just been somebody else you reached out to that an interview didn't work with. I reached back out, I still didn't get the email, we figured it out. It still didn't work, we figured it out. At any point in life, if you stop pushing, life will stop pushing too. It is your job to chase your passion, nobody else's. And so chase it, reach out. I will put you in touch with somebody who might put you in touch with somebody who might put you in touch with somebody else. In 10 years down the road, you might be working a job you had no idea you would ever be doing.
Thank you so much, Matthew. I feel this career, or at least the places sometimes we find ourselves when we want to make these pivots, are very lonely. And I feel this conversation you have expanded not only what a chef, because the podcast itself, all the stories expand what a chef can be, but I feel a lot of what you've shared of what early career professionals, about what your role in Africa, your job with the aquarium, the redefinitions of how the things can be done, and also a lot of your, apart from being a chef, I mean, you have put a lot of your philosophy into how those thoughts and this mindset has got you where you are today. I feel anybody listening to this, I myself, for example, because the people, you and me and others who are in this chef jobs, but they're not very classically serving guests, it's a little, we are outnumbered by the classically trained chefs working still in restaurants. But it feels good there's more people out there who are actually choosing their career and actually shaping their career, because not many of these jobs are on job boards. As you are carving this path, you're carving this path and making it easier for others who come after you. So thank you so much for this. I will
Thank
put
you.
all the links to you in the description. Thanks for volunteering that
Thank
people can reach out to you. I think that would be amazing. No better resource than connecting people. And we'll keep in touch. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate you.
If you're still listening to this podcast and this resonated with you, follow the podcast, rate it, please rate it, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, or rate it on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, or simply share it with someone who might need to hear this, because most chefs don't even realize how far their role can actually go. I'll see you in the next episode.